podcast. I could not be more thrilled that you are here and that I am here. Yes, deep breath and settle into this lovely space that I I seriously wish I could walk around like in this space all the time. But it really doesn't work like that, like to flow this energy and to get to be in this state of like what feels like very unrestricted energy flow and to be able to just sit in it and maintain it for like 50 minutes sometimes, like that feels really abundant. That feels like really powerful. And I can feel the momentum of this ability to like hold that vibration, hold that energetic space, like to pop up this bubble. Like when you're little and they have like the big parachute thing that like everybody gets around the edge and you like use your hands and you pop it and then like you throw it up and you tuck it under your butts and you sit on it and it makes a big energy bubble. Like I feel like I'm helping us to do that, and like let's just like freaking pop up this little bubble and we'll all just sit in here together for however long we want to, because that's the fun of it. um we do it as long as it's fun, and typically it's hilarious because these episodes, they just seem to get longer and longer and longer, and typically when I'm cutting off the episode, it's more a factor of like, okay, enough's enough. Like, I found out that one day, because I was just really going for it, found out that one day that Anchor has a 60-minute recording limit on their little chunks that you can do. And I reckoned later, I came to this, that you could probably record multiple and like tag them together or like tack them together into one episode. But the act of stopping the recording and then having to press record again, pressing record, I just like want to sit here and really give props to anybody who is able to press that record button ever, whether you're talking on a podcast or even just to a trusted friend or your partner, or like saying the thing, being willing to open our mouths and say the thing is like, it's a skill all by itself. Like the willingness to speak, the willingness to speak our truth. Like I've been saying on these last few episodes, I love lessons, like the way that they just kind of like unfold one little piece at a time, and each piece is delightful and delicious. Like each of these last 3 episodes has been its own treat to get to experience. And yet, here I am, like now reflecting back on these last 3 episodes with all of the talk that I did around this feels too big to talk about. Like, how am I going to put this into words? Like, that's the story that I've been telling myself that keeps me from talking about those things. And having told those stories, and the fact that, like, basically on all of them, when I was finished telling them, I'm like, that was way easier to tell than I thought it was going to be. That was way easier to summarize than I thought it was going to be. And this morning in my journaling, it clicked that it was never a matter of the story being complicated. Like, it's not a complicated story. It makes sense. What I was really worried about is how weird it sounds, how weird these things sound, to talk about like our soul in such detail, to talk about being a mermaid, and to talk about this gateway and separating desires, and to spend so much time on anger. Like, it's just so interesting because these topics are like pillars in my inner world. And another like long chunk of my journaling this morning was about how peaceful it is in my inner world. It is like truly a lovely place to get to live. And I built that. Like, that wasn't something that I was ever handed. Like, nobody can ever sculpt in our inner world besides us. Like, we have to do that work ourselves. And, like it's, it's such a dominant intention in my being that I want to be happy. Like, I think I've mentioned before that I have a Leo moon, and Leo moons, especially mine is in the fifth house, which is the house of Leo on top of that. Fifth house Leo moon, like, I want to have fun. I want to express myself. And those wants are soul level wants and really needs. Like, if I'm not getting to do those things, it's sapping my strength, it's emptying my gas tank. And figuring out that I'm the one that, has control over how often my gas tank is getting filled for so long in my life. Like, I I looked for my fuel and my strength to come from other people, to come from them agreeing with me or telling me that I was doing a good job or validating me in some way that I was, thank you, that I was successfully doing what I needed to be doing. I was looking for other people to tell me, and sometimes they did, and there's a little spike in my energy, and that felt like something. So it's like, oh, okay, so that must be how it works. And I did it that way for so long, like letting other people spike my energy by telling me good things about myself. And then I figured out, oh my God, like I can tell me good things about myself and I can spike my energy on purpose every single morning. And 5 years later, holy fucking shit, like my inner world is a gorgeous landscape of peaceful scenery and gentle flowing energy and openness and allowing whatever is unfolding in the moment to be the right thing. You know, like somebody said something, I forget exactly what the context was, but this stands out, that I said, well, it was the right thing, and the person said, well, I guess we'll never know. And I said, no, we do know because it happened. It's the right thing. Being able to trust that, I mean, that's a faith in the universe. That's a faith that says, you know, I know that there's a bigger picture that maybe I can't always see, but I'm choosing to participate in an open, loving way where I will allow my highest good to unfold in perfect harmony with the highest good of all that is. I will walk in this space of doing what my soul came here to do. I will do that. I will forget about what the rest of the world is doing, what the rest of the world says is the normal way to live your life. There's so many people out there who want to tell you like the right way to live your life. And there's gender roles and there's age roles and there's all kinds of things that can get in our way if we really want to create like in the physical plane. Like true creating, like being a deliberate creator of our reality, like going back to Abraham's material. It's done in an emotional plane. It's done in your inner world. It's done in your thoughts. It's done in your emotions. It has nothing to do with anybody else. And like literally this morning, I'm just sitting there in my journal counting my blessings. I just write a little header at the top of a page that says counting my blessings. And then number one, and I just make a list for as long as that feels nice to sit here and just look around at all of the different ways that my life is going well for me. You know, like it's beautiful outside today. The sun came up because the earth is perfectly spinning in its orbit. You know, don't even get me started on the perfection of this universe as a whole and gravity that holds us in place on this planet and lets us do such cool things. Like there are so many big picture general things that like even if you're wanting to argue for your limitations and saying there's nothing to be grateful for in my life, I'm not blessed, there's no blessings. Well, friend, the fact that you're alive means that you're blessed because the universe has well-being at its core. Like the well-being is the dominant force of this universe. That's why all of these planets are sitting perfectly in orbit around this like glowing ball of fire that's our sun, like this random gigantic star. It's just like how, like, it's so much bigger than any one of us. Like, seriously, when I start to get overwhelmed by like, maybe I get into a moment of I need to get all of these things done and I'm really trying to like grab a hold of it and wrestle it to the ground and like do it with my hands and get it done. And I just like a pivot out of that is to zoom out to like even just a picture of the planets is what comes to mind. This one graphic, I'll have to post it on the Instagram. Um, because not only do we feel small, like even just in your house, you're a small little creature. But then you zoom out to like your whole state and your whole country and this planet. And this picture of the planets flashes into my mind the first time I really looked at them and realized like the Earth is like a tenth of the size of Jupiter. Like, holy fucking shit, this gas planet, this gas giant planet exists just like a couple streets over and it is fucking huge. Holy shit. And so like, yeah, just like I love to get it into that perspective where I am so small. I am so small. It's both really, I guess depends on how you look at it, but the way I'm looking at it is like, why not just do whatever feels natural to me? Why not just be who I am and not really fret over what other people are going to think about it? And I'm the queen of caring what other people think about it. So the fact that I'm saying this right now feels like a huge win, personally, and not really a constant state for me yet. You know, like I pop into this strength and I soak it up as long as I'm here. And then in the moments when I'm really wrapped up and usually like upset or at least wobbling over what somebody else thinks about me or said about me or whatever, um, it's helpful to remember that like, you know, emotions are fluid and temporary. And I remember that there are times where I am more secure in believing that really it doesn't matter what people think of me. There are some times when I feel like I even know that. Like right now, I feel like I know it. I don't always know it. Sometimes my vibration's too low and I can't know it. All I know is that they said this thing and it really rocked my world for a minute. You know, like I'm talking like within the last few months, like there was this friend from Pakistan and they write like hurtful comments on a post that I made and like don't have any history with this person and they like went to some length and detail of like taking time to like really attack this content. And it was such a fascinating experience because like my first reaction, my like I guess default, like this is my old momentum of like what had to come up, and this is usually where I was like back in the past. What had to come up was like I took him literally. I took that person's words and I took it like it was freaking fact. Like that opinion was just as important as everything that had like my whole life that had gone into birthing the content that he specifically took the time to attack. And that really like at the end of it, you know, at the end hindsight's 2020, but at the end of it I realized like his attack was really a reflection of my own emotion. You know, everyone is a mirror to us. That's always what's going on as far as what I can tell. So it made a lot of sense because the specific content that we're talking about definitely felt like very vulnerable, like me stepping into new territory and me feeling good enough about it that I was having some hell yes energy and I was moving forward with putting myself out there like that. But I was still unsure and I was still like, I've never done this before. So like, you know, I'm making offers on things that I hope I can deliver on and I've never done it before. And there was wobble in that for me for sure, because I was obviously thinking like, what if I can't deliver? What if I can't deliver? What if I really don't have this thing, this gift that I think that I have? And that tape was playing in my head a little bit, not dominantly, obviously, because I was like having hell yes moments to move it forward. But this is in that category of like new levels, new devils, like, great, you're good enough to move forward on this thing that you've really wanted to do for a long time. And as you do it, here's the wobble that comes along with it. Like even, oh gosh, this podcast is such a good example. Um, Such a good example. And talk about back on the list of things that feels too big to talk about. And now from my journaling this morning, I understand that that really only means that I feel vulnerable about it. I don't think it's too big to talk about. I think it's too deep to talk about. It's too revealing to talk about. Like this, there's so many things I can say on the surface and basically just like, not necessarily lie, but like lie by omission and just never mention my inner world. I didn't have to tell you that I think of myself as a mermaid. That was not necessary to the conversation. And yet we went there. And I told that story because that was what was flowing through me. And that's how I've practiced making these episodes. And so the story is what the story is. And my whole point with this podcast is to trust that. And it is like picking up momentum. Like it's so cool. They're just baby numbers. But this morning, oh my goodness, I had this idea for this thing and it was already like a win-win-win-win-win idea. But anyways, I needed to log into my podcast dashboard. And when I did, you land on that page and it gives you stats about your podcast performance, like how many people are listening, where they're listening, how old they are. Like it's so cool. So many stats. I love stats. Anywho, so I get in there and I think I did mention that we got one new listener last week. And that's because our audience size grew by one. And when I went, like, and I always just look at it on my mobile, like on my phone, and that version is obviously different. So when I'm on my computer and open it, there's like a little thing where you can hover over it and see a definition of audience size. And that is just an average of the number of plays on your podcast episodes in the last 30 days. So it's just like, it's counting like repetitive listens, like how many people are listening to like all of the episodes, not just popping into like one or two. And so that's not the size of the number of people who are listening because the momentum is building. Basically, that's a really old number. Like if you're taking into an average of the whole last 30 days, only really in the last couple of weeks, like this momentum is swinging up. And I've been feeling it, but the number, I got one new listener. I was happy with that. I really was. I mean, I included it on here as like a celebration that like, I'm really happy with that. And on the desktop version, it gives you one more stat that isn't available on the mobile version. And that is the number of unique listeners over the last 7 days. And that number was 20. So that like blew my mind. Like absolutely blew my mind that 20 different people clicked into the content at some point. That jump, like I was thrilled when I went from an audience size, which I now understand, is an old number. I went from an audience size of 3 to 4. I was over the moon. And now to find out that in the last 7 days, 20 different people have clicked in there, that just took it up a notch, obviously. And is that money in the bank? No, it's not. It's just people crossing my path, people rendezvousing with my vibrational output. And some people are going to probably listen to an episode and that'll be it and they'll move along and that's fine. And some people are going to be like instantly wanting to hear another one and another one. And I mean, I know how I am with podcasts. When I find one I like, I binge them all. So it's like to see how many more people are sampling the content, like it feels really, really good. And this is absolutely for me a new levels, new devils moment because when you're making a podcast and nobody's listening to it, it's really easy to just say whatever you want. My original reason for doing this was to practice allowing my voice to flow, to allow the energy to flow, and to like practice my channeling and just like letting that energy flow through me. I wanted to have a spot to practice that. And now that people are listening, that feels really amazing. It feels like its own form of abundance. And it introduces or highlights a wobble probably that I still have on some level that really cares what people think about me. And I start worrying about the content itself and like, are people going to hear something that's too weird and then they stop listening and now my numbers are down? Like now people don't like me and they're telling me that because I'm offending them. Or people who used to, this is a big one, people who really 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 like me now, and then I grow and evolve and I continue speaking my truth, but now that truth is different than the truth that they want to hear, and so now they don't like me anymore. Like all of these kinds of things, like I realize like all of that was such a dominant part of my story and my inner world for so long that it doesn't take a whole lot to really get it going again, because that momentum is so practiced for me to worry about what people think. And when I saw that big number, big number is 20. But still, seriously, freaking huge as far as like compared to 3 and 4. Like, this is amazing. But when I saw that big number, there was such a rush of gratitude and so much excitement and appreciation and like just like humbling to like see that many people were checking it out. And like it felt like almost the very next wave was like almost instantly insecure of like, okay, now I have to make sure I don't lose this. Now I have to make sure that like I keep this going. I have to keep this momentum going. And instantly I feel my gears like grind to a halt because those kinds of thoughts are getting off onto source's side of it, like the how it's being brought about. Like that's not my business. Source and the universe and law of attraction and all of that is taking care of the bigger picture. All I have to do is relax and feel good and open my mouth and speak and let the message be whatever it's going to be in that moment, and practice allowing that to come through. That is all I ever have to do. That's all I'm promising to you. That's all I'm ever going to be able to deliver. I can't promise that I won't piss you off. I can't promise that I'm not going to say something that you don't want to hear. But I can promise you that at all times, I am working on being as open a conduit as I can possibly be, to take my own ego out of it as often as I possibly can, and to simply tell a story about an experience I had. And whatever lessons you guys like to get from those stories, I'm honored. I'm honored that you can see something in them, because on my side, they are extremely fun to tell. And I realized this morning when I saw like that there are definitely more people listening to this than I thought. Even though it felt good, it also introduced a wobble, and that gave me a point to bring my tools, bring my self-love, bring my self-compassion, bring my inner mother, bring all my tools again. It happens like, something every day gets me, even if it's just a tiny little annoyance or a tiny little wobble, I still bring out my tools and I help myself feel better, however long that takes, however long it takes to one step at a time, a little bit more positive thought at a time, eventually reach back towards loving myself and being okay inside of myself, like that inner world component where we started. Like the state of our inner world is being reflected in every single interaction we ever have. And you can tell the state of your inner world by how well your interactions are going. That's the more delayed version of figuring out what your inner world is. You can feel it all the time, but you know, it's easy to be numb to the true state that we're actually carrying around with us. Like, perfect example was that angry dream that I had a while back, where, I mean, it was like 3 different nights in 1 week having that same furious, raging, angry, God, I can just like bring it back almost instantly, like just trembling with rage in my dream. And it happened 3 times in 1 week. And I'm like, okay, what is this? And it was about my mom. And it sparked off this whole thing about, I worked on processing through my mother wound, and I'm still working through those things. And that anger was a complete shock to me. Like, I was totally unaware that I still felt that way about her. And I had, I guess, like repressed it. Maybe that's what it is, suppressed it, repressed it. I don't really know the difference. I pushed it away, and I mean, I've been having an okay relationship with her for, basically my whole life. Like, it's gotten a little bit worse, it's gotten a little bit better, but it's mostly been okay. And I've always wanted it to be awesome, and it just can't ever quite get there. And there has been some shit between us, and nothing like absolutely terrible, but definitely some shit to stir up. And I thought that I was over it, quote unquote. Like, I thought that I had solved that. Like, I healed those wounds and I'm cool with my mom. And like, that was the story that I was telling. And then out of freaking nowhere, I'm having dreams. I'm having really, really, really angry dreams. And the second time it happened, I woke up, and like right on the edge between sleep and awake, this question lands in my head of, what is this dream about? Because now it's been the second time that I've had it, and the answer was right there, Mom. And so, I mean, like, it's not like Source just like gave me these like 2 really awful dreams and then left me hanging. No, I mean, they let me in on what that was about, like, pretty much immediately. And then I didn't do anything about it. I basically ignored that message. I just left it sit there and was like, oh, sure, right. And give it 2 days and I had the dream again. So I was like, oh, okay, fine. Yeah, I'm done having that dream. I don't like it in there. It doesn't feel good. I mean, it's not a restful sleep by any means. And it's just like a really, really rotten, toxic, suffocating rage. Nobody wants to spend time there. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'm willing to do the work. What is this? And so it is absolutely possible that you really don't know what is going on in your inner world. And like, it's probably, I mean, like I said, it's even possible, I guess, because this is what I got going on, to like have a really nice inner world and still have shit like angry dreams bubbling to the surface. Because as we heal, Source is like, oh, good, you're healed. Here's the next little bit. Oh, good, you're healed. Here's the next little bit. And that's the part where basically perpetual healing, like that's kind of the story of my life at this point. Like, that's how I identify my life's work, is really my healing journey. That's my life's work. And who I am as a person is somebody who just really, really enjoys telling stories. And so here I am telling my story of my healing journey. And that's what this is. That's like all this is, this podcast. And that's really me soothing myself into, there will be people who will want to listen. And there will be people who will hear it and say, I have no idea what she's talking about. I've gotten that my whole life. But there are people showing up who do get it, who can hear me. And that's a phenomenon. I'm willing to like continue to put myself out there to meet more of you who can hear me, because that's just, oh gosh, it feels so good. Like I was talking about in the last episode, in the Mermaid Life episode, that it can be an isolated place, but that doesn't mean that I don't like people and I don't like to talk to people and I don't like to, have those interactions. I love it. It's some of like my most favorite delicious moments are spent in deep resonant conversation with other people. It's one of my favorite things. And I've learned that I let it come to me. I don't go out and seek it and make it happen because I I mean, I'm not source. I am technically an extension of source. We all are, but like I'm not the universe. I don't have full view. I can't line up the energy and the components the way that the universe can. And when I let it come to me, everybody's so ready. Everybody's so perfectly ready, and everything is in flow, and there's harmony between the collective, and it's a beautiful state of being when I let it come to me. And in the meantime, it's a matter of enjoying talking to myself. And that is a lot where I finally realized, like, why don't you just make a podcast? Because I was like talking to myself out loud. Like when I get my energy going in my journaling, sometimes like the awareness that's flowing through me that I'm writing on the page, it's happening so fast that I can't write and keep up with it at the same time. And so I'll be sitting here in the quiet of my empty office all by myself journaling, and all of a sudden the conversation goes verbal and I just start talking. I start telling the story out loud because I can translate the energy so much faster. Like translating the energy, like that's really all I want to do. I want to, like I said at the very start of this, like if I could walk around in here all day long, I would. And part of me reaches for this space all day long, this space where I get to tell the story, where I get to open my mouth and translate this really amazing feeling energy. And there are people who want to listen. Like that just, it's one thing to find your like own soul level artistry and like soul level expression that just makes you feel alive, like the reason that you were born, that you're getting to do it, that all by itself is so satisfying. And to watch that there are people out there who can hear it and who find their way to this space with me, and that just like I could feel on some level, like I knew, like I'm not alone, like this is something I've learned about myself, and really I think I've always known it, but I haven't always accepted it. So recently I accepted it. But it's the awareness that basically one of my soul gifts is being able to put things into words. I mean, language is so limiting, and I'm even saying that. Like I'm good at putting things into words, and sometimes like the energy that's flowing, the emotions that we have, there just aren't words. And so I mean, I really feel for people who aren't that great at putting things into words, because I can't even imagine the limitations of like trying to come up with words to match how you feel. But that happens to be one of my gifts, and getting to live that gift is, I think, the word alive. Like purpose is another word that's kind of circulating. It's like, this is the reason. This is putting things into words. Like that is the soul level gift that I have, and not everybody has that gift. And here I was for, up until February when I launched this podcast, here I was speaking into the silence in my office for the benefit of myself. And, it was going really well. And I've done that for years. I've done those verbal rampages basically ever since I started journaling, because eventually after a few pages of writing it on the page, like it's just going so fast, you can't expect to write it on the page. And that gets really frustrating if you don't continue to translate it, because you're only given like one tiny little bit of the energy at a time. It's flowing. And like when you can't translate it, you're cutting off the flow. And so the leap from writing to verbal, it happens usually where like I'm a couple minutes into talking and then I'm like, wait, I'm talking. Oh my gosh, how did this happen? I don't even like recognize that I'm doing that, because it feels so natural to allow the energy to flow and to put words on it. That's natural. And doing it in the privacy of my office, like there just got to a point where I'm like, fuck it. Like, let me put this out there. And if there are people who find it helpful, cool. And if there are people who listen and they don't get it, cool. And like, let me do this. And it's so that journey, like going back to those early episodes, which I've done with us launching the blog, like going back to those early episodes, my energy, I was on such a high when I did that first episode of Go For It. And I woke up that next morning and was still in the energy and did Hell Yes Energy, that second episode. And then the third episode is Vulnerability Hangover, because almost instantly I hit new levels, new devils. Like, the things that we really, really, really want, and even the things that we're really naturally good at, lead us on a path of solving and resolving the resistance, the wounds, the things that need to be healed. And like, it's just sinking in on a new level that there's never a moment where everything is perfect in the world, so now it's a good time to start. Like, it really only ever is a matter of like you wanting to start or not. And there are so many reasons that I would tell myself for why I wasn't ready to start yet. And and like, this is the funny part. And my gift is putting things into words. Like, as far as a podcast goes, really the main thing that you need is a willingness to open your mouth and speak. And the rest of it is just details. And Anchor, where I'm recording this, makes it so easy. So the willingness to speak is really the only ingredient that you ever really need. And if you have that, you're golden. So if you're sitting there telling a story about why you can't start yet, why you can't start like telling your story, telling your message, flowing your own energy, I would just take a second and ask, like, what's really standing in my way? Because every single time I'm the one standing in my own way. So I've talked myself out of it enough times, like, and really talked myself out of it. That makes it sound a lot more deliberate than it is, because really we can only lean in a better feeling direction. Like, we can't all of a sudden change who we are. It's a matter of, like, Abraham uses the phrase like getting ready to be ready. And that's the way, that's the way she's saying that we live our lives, is like getting ready to be ready. I'm getting ready to be ready to make my first episode. I'm getting ready to be ready to make my second episode. And then a wave of shame and regret and all kinds of things wash over me. And now I'm getting ready to be ready to make my third episode. And it's like that. It's like these episodes, I mean, they're just mile markers along the way as I walk towards this thing that I've wanted for so long. It's really, again, always a matter of a healing journey. It brings, I was explaining to somebody the other day that, like, the path of least resistance, which Abraham talks all about, the path of least resistance is the same thing as the path of most fun. And that's what this podcast is. Like, I do it because it's fun. I started it because it's fun. Predating the podcast, I journaled and would find myself talking out loud without even realizing that I was doing it, because it was fun. And I followed that path of most fun, and eventually, one step at a time, getting ready to be ready, eventually I made the episode Go For It. I was in a place where I was so ready to speak my truth that all of my fears and everything, it seemed so small. And second episode, Hell Yes Energy, I understand Hell Yes Energy. So I leapt off that freaking cliff, and I'm so glad I did, because here I am 44 episodes later, and the start is never going to be easy. Those first episodes, they're a little bit painful. I think about the endings of them, especially. The beginnings are only a close second, but the endings of those episodes, oh my God. It's just like a real practice of owning authenticity, and actually owning authenticity, my brand, my umbrella that kind of overarches everything that I do. Well, I guess a good big chunk of what I do. I only came up with that after recording several episodes of this podcast, because it was harder than I thought it would be at a couple different places, like starting and stopping. The beginning and the end are the hardest parts. And the end, especially, I have some really awkward ones at the beginning of the series, of like the first few episodes. And then eventually this line came out that says, take good care, and so will I. I love the self-empowered self-care of that. I feel like it just really sums it up. Like, you do you, take good care of yourself, and I'll do me, and I'll take good care of myself, and I'll see you next time. Like, that line just popped out of my mouth one day, and I liked it, and so I kept it, and my Taurus rising, like creature of habit self, just like tacks it on to the end of every episode, and I don't even think about it, because ending the episode was awkward and I didn't expect it. That's why, especially that first one, I mean, it's just like I kind of circled around the end of it a couple times, because I'm like, I don't know how to land this plane. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. So yeah, it was just one of those moments where, like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm gonna do my best in front of an audience. I'm not gonna stop recording. I'm not gonna edit this out. And that was a very powerful moment of like doing it awkwardly and then just leaving it on there. Because as painful as that was, I was like, this is real. This is how it is. This is what I'm working with. This is the best I got. And I'm giving it to you. I'm always going to give you the best I got. And sometimes it's awkward. So yeah, that was such a powerful moment of acceptance, of like really letting myself be awkward, and like, who cares? Like, I did it. The only reason that I even faced that hurdle of like how to end the podcast episode was because now I was making a podcast episode, which had never happened before. So it's new territory. Of course, I'm not going to know. And the trick in that moment, the tool that we bring with us to help us with that, is grace, is letting yourself off the hook for not being perfect, cutting yourself some slack, and giving yourself grace, giving yourself that love and support and encouragement, and to, focus on your own bigger picture, that the only reason that you even faced that challenge was because you did it, like, celebrate that. And we can tell ourselves that story. And I did. And it helped me to like really pull this into focus, that I don't just want to be authentic. I want to own my authentic self. I want to flaunt my awkwardness and be totally okay if that's what comes out in the moment, because that's all I can do. That's like, if it happened, it's the right thing. And accepting that and trusting that, it's like trusting the universe. The universe has my back. I know it. I know it for a fact. And living now that I know that it's true, I mean, it really does smooth the bumps out of the road. Every single thing that happens is my highest good unfolding in harmony with the highest good of everything that is. And if that means a little bit of contrast for me in this moment, like an awkward moment at the end of my very first podcast episode where I had no fucking clue what to say. You guys, you got to go back and listen to it. There was, I mean, like, I'm going to say at least like the first 5 or 6 episodes, like the ending is actually like kind of painful. Maybe someday we can like make a montage of like all those endings. Yeah. And you just own it. I mean, that happened. I wasn't perfect. I didn't know how to land the plane. And so I circled around it awkwardly, and then I screeched it and bounced it onto the runway and then like slammed on the brakes and killed the engine. Like, that was basically my first few landing attempts. And, the opening was basically the same. Like, that takeoff, it's it's a little tricky to like, how do I get the energy moving in the beginning? And that's where setting the stage is everything. You know, like I journal for hours before I come in here, and I listen to content that I like, and I drink my coffee, and I read tarot cards, and I focus myself into this really good feeling place. And then we move into like phase 2, which is lighting the candle and singing the songs and like really relaxing my body, every single muscle in my body. I try to mentally just go through and relax them all and feel the total well-being of my world, inner and outer. And then I press record. And so it's like that. Like it's a our outside world is a reflection of our inner world. And what we work to cultivate in our inner world will always be shown to us in the outer world. And for so long, I lived believing that my creating was done in the outer world. I moved things around with my hands. I talked to other people about stuff. I called them and I paid them to do things. And, like all of those pieces that I moved around in the outside world, I thought that that was being a creator. And now I've learned and I know that creating happens in that emotional space. It happens in our inner world. And if you want more peace or love in your outer world, in your life, in those external circumstances, it's a matter of bringing it to your inner world. It has to come from inside of you. And when it's coming from inside of you and flowing through you because you put it there, the outer world will reflect it to you every single time. This is what I've learned. So I appreciate you being here in this space with me again as I move through this process of my healing journey. And I love getting to share it with you. It's literally the piece of the puzzle that, like, I'm glad that I came so far without having this outlet, because it really helps me to appreciate just how powerful and helpful it really is for me in my process. It is such a luxury, and I hope to always feel that way about it. Honestly, yeah. I hope to always appreciate it as much as I do now. So thank you for being part of creating this with me. And until next time, dear friends, you take good care, and so will I.